So when we think about navigating through our modern world, the dominant image is really just that glowing blue line on our smartphones, right?
Right. Yeah, the GPS.
Yeah, you just punch in an address, the screen lights up, and it tells you exactly where you are, exactly when to turn, and, what lane to be in.
It's totally effortless.
Exactly. And if you happen to miss a turn, there's no real panic. A calm synthetic voice just instantly recalculates your path. You never really have to engage with the world outside your windshield at all. You just obey the line.
Well, yeah, because it is a completely frictionless experience. The system is intentionally designed to remove all the cognitive load from the user. You're being passively guided through an environment rather than actively surviving it or understanding it.
But imagine a radically different scenario for a second. Imagine someone drops you into the middle of a dense, unfamiliar forest.
Oh, boy.
Right. And they take away the phone and hand you a blank piece of grid paper, a simple compass, and a pencil.
That's terrifying for most people today.
Totally terrifying. Suddenly, you have to actually look at the moss growing on the north side of the trees. You have to stop and listen for the sound of running water just to find a river. You have to calculate how much daylight you have left before the temperature drops. The environment is no longer just scenery you pass through.
Right. It becomes a complex puzzle you have to solve to survive.
Exactly. And that shift from passive guidance to active high-stakes engagement, that's the exact paradigm shift we're looking at today. We are putting away the blue line and picking up the blank grid paper.
I love that analogy. It's so fitting.
Welcome to Into the Megadungeon, our space dedicated to exploring tabletop role-playing game lore, mechanics, and design. I'm so excited because today we are doing our very first deep dive.
The inaugural deep dive.
The inaugural deep dive. And we are going to look at a text that embodies that blank grid paper philosophy perfectly. We are taking a comprehensive deep dive into the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome.
It is such an incredible book.
It really is. And our goal here isn't just to, review a product.
Yeah.
Whether you're a veteran referee trying to understand the mathematical chassis of the game, or you're a modern player curious about what makes the old school style of play so distinctive, we're going to extract the core mechanics and the underlying psychology of this book.
Yeah, because it serves as a sort of Rosetta Stone. I mean,
Right.
The tabletop hobby has fragmented into dozens of different design philosophies over the decades, right?
Absolutely.
But this book attempts to bridge a very specific gap in the history of the medium. It basically codifies an oral tradition of gaming into a highly usable format.
Right. And to be totally clear about how we're approaching this text today, we aren't going to sit here and read you dry tables of weapon damages.
Please no.
Right. No verbatim paragraphs of copyright-protected rules either. To respect the creators and dodge the dreaded copyright strike, we are strictly paraphrasing here. Nobody wants to listen to an hour of us reciting mathematical formulas anyway.
Definitely not.
We're going to look at what these mechanics actually force the players to do at the table. We're translating the raw numbers into the actual psychological experience of playing the game.
And the history of how those numbers came to be is vital context here. When we look at the evolution of fantasy role-playing, there's a very distinct schism that happened.
Right, between the late 70s and early 80s.
Exactly. In the late 1970s, the advanced iteration of the original game was published, and it was this sprawling, wondrous, deeply weird creation.
It was so weird.
It had mind-bending planar magic, strange subterranean races, and incredibly complex subsystems for literally everything.
From unarmed grappling to contracting highly specific diseases.
Right.
A bit of a beautiful mess, like a massive chaotic fantasy novel where the author just kept scribbling completely new ideas and intersecting rules in the margins, and then they just published the margins.
That is a very fair assessment. It was bursting with flavor, but the rules were famously dense, occasionally contradictory, and they relied really heavily on the referee to interpret these layers of complex matrices.
Yeah, you had to cross-reference so much stuff.
But then, in 1981, a different branch of the rules was published, the basic and expert sets.
Right.
And these were a revelation in terms of game design. They were streamlined, elegant, and focused on logical procedures. They prioritized fast-paced action and absolute clarity over exhaustive detail.
So if I'm understanding this right, the 1970s game had all the flavor and the weirdness, but a really clunky engine.
Yes.
And the 1980s game had a brilliant, highly functional engine, but maybe lacked the sprawling, bizarre options of the earlier game.
Which brings us to the specific brilliance of the book we are diving into today. What's fascinating here is that the Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome takes that robust, beautifully simple procedural engine of the 1981 rules,
The functional one.
right, the functional one, and it carefully injects it with all the wild, imaginative, complex flavor of the 1970s advanced game.
Oh, man, it's like finding a highly reliable, meticulously tuned modern sports car engine and just dropping it into the chassis of a bizarre, customized 1970s muscle car.
That's exactly it. You get the procedural reliability and the speed at the table, but you also get the arcane illusions, the assassins, and the multi-classed elves. It's the best of both worlds.
But to understand how that hybrid engine actually functions when you sit down to play, we have to look at the foundational philosophy of the text, because it operates on a principle that is fundamentally opposed to modern game design.
Yes, the phrase you will hear most often is rulings over rules.
Okay, let's unpack this, because coming from modern systems, this can be a massive culture shock.
Oh, huge.
Modern role-playing games generally operate on the assumption that the rulebook is an exhaustive physics engine.
Right? Yes, there's a rule for everything.
Literally everything. If I want my character to jump off a balcony, swing on an iron chandelier, and kick a goblin into a roaring fireplace, a modern game provides a specific button for that.
You just look at your character sheet.
Right. I find my acrobatic skill, I roll a 20-sided die, add my specific acrobatics modifier, and the game provides a specific table of difficulty classes to determine if I succeed.
And a specific rule for falling damage if you fail.
Exactly. And a specific mechanic for forced movement to handle pushing the goblin. The system provides the answer.
But the old school framework explicitly rejects that approach. The text we're looking at today deliberately leaves massive gaps in the mechanics.
Gaps.
Yeah, intentional gaps. There is no acrobatic skill on the character sheet. There is no universal table of difficulty classes for physical stunts.
So what do you do?
The game relies on the human being running the game, the referee, to listen to the player's intention, apply common sense, establish a reasonable probability of success, and just make a quick ruling in the moment.
I hear that, and, I understand the appeal of a fast-paced game. But I have to push back here.
Sure.
If there is no rule book to point to when I want to swing on that chandelier, doesn't that strip away my agency as a player?
How do you mean?
Well, if the referee's just having a bad day, or if they decide my idea is silly, they can just say, no, you fall and break your leg.
Yeah.
Without a codified rule to protect me, where is the safety net? Doesn't relying on human judgment just lead to arbitrary, unfair outcomes?
That is the absolute most common and, frankly, valid apprehension players have when moving from a modern framework to an old school one. But it assumes the referee is acting in an adversarial role.
Which they shouldn't be.
Exactly. The book is very clear that the referee is a neutral arbiter of the world, not an opponent. And more importantly, the lack of a specific rule does not remove your agency. It actually demands a higher level of engagement.
Okay, color me intrigued. How so?
Well, in a modern game, you interact with the world through the menu on your character sheet. You look for the skill you have the highest number in, and you press that button.
Yeah, it becomes a user interface problem. You walk into a room, and you're just looking for the objects that have a glowing outline, indicating you can interact with them, like in a video game.
Right, and if the developers didn't program a specific skill for it, you feel like you can't attempt it. But because this game lacks those buttons, you're forced to look up from your character sheet and engage with the imagined reality of the environment.
So I have to actually think about the chandelier.
Yes. You have to ask the referee questions, like how high is the ceiling? Is the chandelier chain rusted? Is the goblin standing on a rug that I could pull instead? You interact with the fiction, not the mechanics. If you can describe a logical way to manipulate the environment, you can attempt it.
Oh, I see. So the referee might say, well, the chain looks old. I'll give you a 1 in 6 chance that the chain snaps when you put your weight on it. But if it holds, you can make an attack roll with a bonus. The negotiation happens in the fiction.
Yes, exactly. It shifts the burden from system mastery, memorizing rule books and character builds, to environmental mastery. You survive by being clever in the fictional space.
That's a huge mindset shift.
It is. And this is also where the specific text of this book acts as a piece of game archaeology. The heritage section is fascinating.
How so?
Well, the authors didn't just blindly copy-paste the rules from the early 80s. Where there were genuine historical ambiguities, places where the original rules legitimately contradicted themselves or contained mathematical dead ends, This book cleans them up.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it clarifies the procedures, so the referee has a perfectly clean slate upon which to make those rulings without repeating the mistakes of the
It
past.
creates an incredibly open, rulings-first sandbox.
Hmm.
But before a player can start pulling levers
Well,
and asking about the rust on the chandelier chain and surviving this lethal world, they need a way to interface with it, right?
you need an avatar.
Exactly. And the way you build a character in this system completely bucks the modern trend of optimization.
It really does. It starts with the absolute raw biological and psychological DNA of the adventurer, the 6 ability scores.
The classic 6. Strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma.
Right. Every character is defined by a number between 3 and 18 in these categories.
Now, we don't need to define what strength or dexterity is. I mean, anyone who has played a video game understands the basic concepts. But what I find utterly fascinating is how these scores mechanically interact with the rest of your character's life. Specifically, the concept of the prime requisite.
Yes. This is a brilliant, subtle piece of design that influences the entire arc of a campaign. Every class has one or more abilities that are vital to their specific function.
Like for a magic user, their prime requisite is intelligence.
Right. And for a fighter, it's strength. For a thief, it's dexterity. In modern games, having a high score in your primary stat just makes you mathematically better at your job. You hit more often, or your spells are harder to resist.
But here, having a high prime requisite doesn't just change your immediate math. It fundamentally alters your trajectory in the universe.
Exactly.
If you have an exceptionally high score in your class's prime requisite, the game actually grants you a percentage bonus to all the experience points you earn.
It creates a synergistic loop between a character's innate biology and their chosen profession. If you play a character who leans into their natural talents, say, a highly intelligent character who dedicates their life to the study of arcane magic, the universe literally rewards them.
They learn faster.
Yes, they process trauma quicker, and they level up at an accelerated rate compared to someone who is fighting against their nature.
And conversely, if you take a character with a completely average or, even poor strength score, and you force them to become a frontline fighter, they are going to struggle. They will actually earn an experience point penalty.
It's brutal, but it makes sense.
Right. They learn slower because they are fighting their own biological limits. It is a mechanic that forces you to respect the dice.
Which brings us to the actual generation of those numbers. Because the default method presented for creating a character is to roll 3 6-sided dice in order for each of the 6 stats.
Wait, in order?
In order. Whatever you roll for, strength is your strength. You do not get to assign the numbers where you want them. You cannot build a custom array.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Because if I am a player coming to this game for the first time, that sounds miserable.
I know, it really does to a lot of people.
Right. If I sit down, roll the dice in order, and end up with a frail, clumsy, foolish character with terrible stats across the board, why would I want to play them? Why would I invest my time playing a fundamentally broken adventurer who is statistically likely to die in the first room of the dungeon?
It's a profound shift in perspective. Modern game design is engineered around the concept of the build. You come to the table with a 50-page backstory for a character you have already decided is a hero.
Yeah, you've planned out their abilities up to level 20 before session 1.
Exactly. In that mindset, bad stats ruin the blueprint. But in the old-school framework, characters are discovered, not engineered.
Okay, discovered. I like that. You don't bring a superhero to the table. You bring a deeply flawed, highly vulnerable person to the table, and you see if they can survive long enough to become a hero.
Yes. The dice serve as a writing prompt. Let's say you roll the dice and get terrible physical stats. Low strength, low constitution, clumsy dexterity. But you happen to roll a massive charisma score.
Okay.
In a modern game, you might throw those stats away. But here, you look at those numbers and ask, who is this person?
Oh, I see. They're a fast talker. They're a con artist. Or maybe a displaced noble who knows they can't swing a sword to save their life, so they use their immense personal magnetism to hire heavily armed mercenaries to do the fighting for them.
And because charisma directly dictates how many retainers and mercenaries you can hire and how loyal they are to you, that is a completely viable, mechanically supported way to play the game. You didn't plan to play a frail commander of mercenaries, but the dice handed you that reality, and now you have to survive it. It forces you out of your comfort zone and creates organic, surprising narratives.
That is genuinely really cool. And speaking of discovering your place in the world, the book handles the concept of alignment in a way that feels almost alien to modern sensibilities.
Yes, alignment is so different here.
Today, alignment is usually treated as a psychological personality test, right?
Right.
Are you chaotic good, like a rebel with a heart of gold, or lawful evil, like a corrupt politician? It's internal morality.
Right.
But this book strips it back down to a much older, weirder, almost Michael Moorcock-inspired vision of the universe. You basically have three choices: law, neutrality, or chaos.
It is vital for a new player to understand that in this specific text, alignments are not primarily about internal morality. They are objective, tangible cosmic factions.
Like actual forces in the universe.
Yes, as real and measurable as gravity or thermodynamics. When you select an alignment, you are essentially declaring which cosmic army you are enlisting with in a multi-dimensional war.
And what I love is how that abstract concept has concrete physical mechanics at the table. If you look at the spell No Alignment, it does not function as a lie detector or a morality test. The spell detects the literal cosmic radiation of a creature or an object.
Yes, the alignment permeates the physical world. A magical sword can be fundamentally aligned with law. An ancient, corrupted altar deep underground can be radiating the physical energy of chaos.
So if my character is aligned with law, and I attempt to pick up a magic item that is radiating chaos, it isn't just a philosophical disagreement.
No, not at all.
The item might physically burn my hand, it might actively reject me. It anchors the character so deeply into the mythic reality of the setting. You aren't just a random person with a sword. You are an agent of cosmic order moving through a world that is slowly being consumed by entropic chaos.
So you have your raw stats. You have your cosmic allegiance. The next step is choosing your career. And this is where the advanced part of the book really showcases its massive modularity.
Because it offers two entirely distinct tracks for building your character.
Right. The basic method and the advanced method.
And the basic method is a direct port from the 1981 rules. It relies on a concept called race as class.
Yes.
If you want to play a human, you choose a profession, like fighter, cleric, magic user, thief. But if you want to play a non-human, your race is your class. You don't play an elven fighter or an elven wizard. You just write down elf on your sheet. That is your job.
To a modern player, that can feel incredibly restrictive. They ask, why can't I be a dwarven wizard? But the basic method is all about the distillation of archetypes and extreme speed.
Right.
An elf, in this context, is the ultimate mythological expression of that species. It is a being that is naturally attuned to the forest, fights with a sword, and casts arcane magic. That is simply what elves do in this specific fantasy reality.
And the practical result at the table is frictionless speed. A player can sit down, roll their stats in order, decide to play a halfling, buy a short sword and a backpack, and be standing at the entrance to the dungeon in less than 10 minutes.
It is the ultimate plug-and-play experience. And if your character dies, which honestly is highly likely,
Very likely.
you can roll up a new basic character while the rest of the party is resolving the combat.
But the book recognizes that not every player wants that streamlined archetypal experience. Some players want deep customization. They want tinker. And that is what the advanced method provides. It completely decouples race and class, expanding the options exponentially.
The sheer volume of modularity here is staggering. You have 13 distinct classes.
13.
Yeah. You have martial specialists like the heavy-hitting fighter, the mounted knight, the wilderness ranger, or the unarmored barbarian. You have divine casters like the cleric, the martial paladin, or the nature-worshipping druid. You have the arcane masters, the standard magic user, and the reality-bending illusionist. And you have the specialists, the thief, the assassin, the acrobat, and the bard.
And you multiply that by 10 distinct races. You have the standard humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings. But you also have the strange subterranean species from the 1970s lore.
The weird stuff.
Yeah, the weird stuff. The sinister, deep-dwelling Grau elves. The dour underground Duergard dwarves. The stony, heavily armored Surfneblin gnomes. Half-orcs and half-elves.
So suddenly you can spend an hour meticulously crafting a Duergar assassin, analyzing how their innate dwarven resistance to magic interacts with the assassin's stealth abilities. You can build a Svirfneblin illusionist. You have access to deep, granular customization.
And the masterstroke of the book's design is that both of these creation methods are completely mathematically balanced against each other.
Yes, that's crucial.
The player who took 10 minutes to roll a basic dwarf can sit at the exact same table as the player who spent an hour optimizing an advanced half-orc paladin, and they will adventure together seamlessly. The math of the game does not break.
But if we really want to talk about complex math and 70s flavor, we have to talk about the optional rule for multiple classes.
Oh man, multi-classing.
Yeah, this is a concept that notoriously breaks modern games. If you allow a player to take levels in Fighter, and then levels in Wizard, and then levels in Thief, they usually end up creating an overpowered, game-breaking monster of a character.
Right, because they just stack abilities.
Yeah.
So how does this book handle a character who wants to be a fighter, a magic user, and a thief all at once?
It handles it through a mechanism of extreme cost and trade-offs. The rules allow an advanced demi-human to select up to 3 classes at character creation. Let's look at a classic combination, an Elven Fighter Thief.
Okay.
You get the abilities of both. You can wear heavy armor, use any weapon, pick locks, and hide in shadows.
Okay, I mean, it sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But what is the catch?
The catch is time and progression. Whenever the party discovers a treasure hoard or defeats a monster, earning experience points, the single-class thief gets to apply all of their XP directly toward their next level. They rocket upward in power.
Right.
But your Elven Fighter Thief has to split their XP exactly in half. One half goes to the fighter progression, the other half goes to the thief progression.
Oh, wow. So while the single-class characters are reaching level 3, unlocking powerful new abilities and gaining massive amounts of health, the fighter thief is still languishing at level 1 in both of their classes.
Exactly. They are incredibly versatile, but they are dramatically slower to master any of their skills. They are perpetually behind the power curve of the rest of the party.
And the bookkeeping required for this reflects the granular nature of the era. Consider how the game calculates hit points for a multi-classed character. It uses fractional math.
I love this part.
It's so nerdy. Let's say your fighter thief earns enough XP to finally gain a level in thief. The thief class uses a 4-sided die for health. You roll the die, let's say you roll a 3. But because you are a dual-class character, you must divide that roll by 2. You gain 1.5 hit points.
You physically write down fractions on your character sheet.
Yes. And later, when you finally earn enough XP to level up your fighter side, you roll the fighter's 8-sided die. Let's say you roll a 5. You divide by 2, gaining 2.5 hit points. You add that to the previous fraction, and you finally gain 4 whole hit points.
It ensures that the character never gains a monstrous, unbalanced amount of health compared to the single-class characters. It's perfectly balanced.
And beyond the math, the game forces fascinating tactical trade-offs in the fiction. Yes, your fighter thief has the ability to wear massive protective plate mail armor because they are a fighter.
Right.
But the rules explicitly state that if you are wearing heavy, clanking metal armor, you are physically incapable of using your thief abilities. You cannot move silently or climb sheer surfaces in plate mail.
It requires the player to constantly analyze their environment and make choices. Before entering the dungeon, you have to look at your inventory. Do you wear the leather armor, leaving yourself vulnerable to attacks but retaining your ability to scout ahead and disarm traps? Or do you strap on the plate mail, accepting that you are now just a slow, noisy fighter for this expedition?
You can be the tank, or you can be the ghost, but the system strictly prevents you from being both simultaneously.
Exactly. So you have built your character, you have your stats, your cosmic alignment, and you've meticulously calculated the fractions of your Drow Fighter Thief. You are standing at the entrance to the subterranean abyss. Now the actual game begins.
And this brings us to what I consider the absolute core of the old school experience. The mechanics of survival, equipment, encumbrance, and exploration.
This is where the genre of the game shifts dramatically. Many modern players approach fantasy role-playing as a superhero narrative, right?
Oh, yeah. Kick down the door, blast the bad guys.
Right. The heroes stride into the dungeon, utilize their spectacular magical abilities to obliterate the monsters, and return triumphant. But this book treats the environment, whether it's an uncharted wilderness, a ruined keep, or the pitch-black depth of the underworld, as an actively hostile ecosystem. It is a survival horror game.
And in a survival horror game, you don't survive because of your glowing magical sword. You survive because of mundane logistics. You survive because of what you packed in your canvas backpack.
Logistics are everything.
We are talking about iron rations. We are talking about 50-foot coils of hemp rope. We are talking about the iconic 10-foot wooden pole.
Ah, the 10-foot pole.
You literally use it to physically tap the stone floor ahead of you to trigger pressure plates before you step on them. It's essential.
But the absolute most vital resource in the entire game, the resource that drives the tension of exploration more than any monster, is light.
Yes.
The rules governing illumination are exact, mathematical, and incredibly unforgiving.
Let's walk through a scenario for the listeners. You are deep underground. There is no ambient light. None. A standard wooden torch provides a clear radius of illumination for exactly 30 feet. Beyond that 30-foot bubble is total, impenetrable darkness.
And that torch burns for exactly 1 hour of in-game time.
Right.
In the mechanics of the game, 1 hour translates to 6 exploration turns. The referee is constantly tracking these turns behind the screen. Every time the party searches a room, picks a lock, or carefully moves down a corridor, a turn ticks by.
And when that 6th turn ends, the referee simply announces, your torch sputters and dies.
And then that's it.
If you do not have another torch to light, you are immediately plunged into absolute darkness, surrounded by subterranean monsters that have infravision and can see your body heat perfectly. The psychological pressure of that ticking clock is immense.
So naturally, a player's first instinct is to buy 50 torches and 20 flasks of lantern oil and stuff them all into their backpack.
Obviously. Just pack light for days.
But the system brilliantly counters that instinct with the mechanic of encumbrance. Every single item you carry has a physical weight, and that weight directly impacts your ability to survive.
The book offers 2 ways to track this: basic and detailed. The basic system relies on the referee's judgment. If you look like you're carrying too much, you slow down.
Simple enough.
But the detailed encumbrance option is where the true granular genius of the game shines. Under detailed rules, weight isn't measured in abstract pounds or kilograms. It is measured in coins.
This is so old school. A standard coin, a gold piece, a silver piece, or a copper piece is the baseline unit of measurement. A single coin weighs 1 coin. A torch weighs a specific number of coins. Your heavy armor weighs thousands of coins.
Thousands.
Yes. The game provides strict thresholds for how much weight a character can carry before their physical movement speed drops.
And your movement speed dictates whether you can outrun the horrific gelatinous cube that is slowly oozing down the corridor towards you. Every item you add to your character sheet pushes you closer to a slower speed tier.
This creates the ultimate heist movie dynamic at the table.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting.
Right. Imagine a party of adventurers who have spent 4 grueling hours navigating a trap-filled dungeon. They are low on health, they have 1 torch left, and they finally locate the forgotten treasury. They break open the door and find a mountain of silver pieces. 10,000 silver pieces. They are rich.
But the math immediately turns that victory into a nightmare.
Exactly.
Because 10,000 silver pieces is incredibly heavy. If you try to shovel all of that silver into your burlap sacks, your encumbrance will instantly push you into the lowest movement tier. You will be reduced to a miserable crawl.
And the noise of breaking into the treasury has triggered a wandering monster roll behind the referee's screen.
Oh no.
A patrol of heavily armed hobgoblins is marching down the hall.
The game forces the players into an agonizing calculation here. How much wealth are you willing to risk your life for? Do you drop your heavy armor on the floor, permanently reducing your defenses, just so you can carry more silver?
Right, or do you leave the silver behind and spend precious exploration turns trying to pry the lighter, more valuable gems out of the statues, knowing your torch is burning down?
Do you dump your vital iron rations, risking starvation on the multi-day wilderness trek back to town, just to make room for the treasure? It turns accounting into a gripping narrative climax.
It really does. You are literally weighing your greed against your survival, and the procedure of moving that heavy treasure through the dungeon is just as tense, because this game does not use a digital screen with a fog of war that automatically reveals the map as you walk.
No auto mapping here.
The characters are charting the unknown, and the rules explicitly demand that one player at the table takes on the role of the mapper.
Armed with a physical piece of grid paper and a pencil. As the party moves, the referee describes the environment based on their hidden master map. The corridor is 10 feet wide. It goes straight for 30 feet, then branches into a T-intersection. There is a heavy, iron-banded oak door on the left wall of the intersection. The mapper has to listen to those dimensions and draw them accurately.
Let's look at the consequences if the mapper makes a mistake.
Oh, this is the best part.
Let's say the referee says the corridor is 30 feet long, but the mapper isn't paying close attention and draws a 40-foot corridor on the grid paper. For an hour of play, everything seems fine, but then the party needs to flee from a monster. They decide to run down a parallel hallway, hoping to loop back around to the entrance based on their map.
But because the map is fundamentally flawed, the spatial geometry of the dungeon no longer lines up.
Right. They turn a corner expecting to see the exit, and instead they are facing a solid stone wall. They are trapped.
The panic that sets in at the table when the players realize their map is compromised is incredible. It forces the players to hang on the referee's every word because missing a single detail can lead directly to their deaths.
And that procedural tension extends beyond the dungeon and into the wilderness. The rules for overland travel are just as strict. When the party leaves the safety of a town and strikes out into the wild, the referee is constantly rolling dice in secret to see if they get lost.
And the probability of getting lost changes drastically based on the terrain. If you're marching across a clear, flat grassland, the chance is minimal. But if you're trying to navigate a dense, uncharted jungle or a fog-choked, treacherous swamp, the odds are heavily stacked against you.
And what I find so compelling is how the referee handles the failure. If the dice dictate the party is lost, the referee does not announce, "You are lost."
They don't.
No. The referee simply asks the players which direction they want to travel. The players might confidently say, "We march north, toward the mountains." But behind the screen, the referee is secretly shifting their trajectory.
That is so tedious. The players might spend 3 days of in-game time marking off rations and water, believing they're heading north, while the referee knows they are actually marching east, directly into the heart of a hostile goblin encampment. It is a procedural engine for generating organic, unscripted peril.
It creates a relentless, inescapable rhythm. The sequence of play per day is strictly codified. The players choose a direction. The referee checks for getting lost. The referee rolls for wandering monsters. The terrain is navigated. And then the end of the day inevitably arrives. Time records are updated. Rations must be consumed. Spells expire. The characters must rest in a hostile environment.
So you have a party of fragile characters. They have their rope, their dwindling torches, their meticulously drawn, potentially flawed maps, and their bags of heavy silver. But to survive the truly bizarre, otherworldly threats of this reality, the undead, the chimeras, the things that lurk in the deepest caverns.
Mundane equipment is not enough.
It's not. You need to tap into the arcane, which leads us to the magic system and the ever-present reality of mortality.
Magic in this system is entirely predicated on preparation and resource management. It is not an endless pool of energy.
Right.
Much like character creation, the book provides 2 distinct frameworks for arcane casters, the magic users, and the illusionists to manage their spells, the standard rules and the advanced rules.
Let's examine the standard spellbook rules first. In this framework, your spellbook is a perfectly closed, highly controlled system. It contains exactly the number of spells that your character is physically capable of memorizing for that specific day.
So if your level dictates that you have the mental capacity to memorize 2 spells, your physical spellbook contains exactly 2 spells. To gain access to more magic, you must survive long enough to level up and then spend a week in town paying a mentor or a magical guild to teach you a new formula.
It's very safe, very predictable.
Yeah.
But the advanced spellbook rules, which are entirely optional but highly recommended to capture that complex 70s flavor, they blow the doors completely open. Under the advanced rules, there is no artificial limit to the number of spells your book can hold. It can be a massive library of arcane knowledge.
However, the number of spells you start the game with is strictly dictated by your intelligence score.
This brings the mechanics full circle, back to the raw stats we discussed earlier.
Exactly. If you rolled an incredibly rare 18 intelligence, your character begins the game with 5 spells in their book. You have a massive, versatile toolkit right out of the gate. But if you rolled an average intelligence, you might only begin with 1 or 2 spells.
But the real draw of the advanced rules is that you can actively hunt for new magic out in the world. If you are exploring a dungeon and you discover a magical scroll hidden in a chest, or if you manage to assassinate a rival sorcerer and steal their spellbook, you can attempt to decipher their arcane equations and copy those spells into your own book.
But the system ensures that this process is fraught with risk. It is not guaranteed. When you attempt to copy a new spell, you must roll percentile dice against a chance of success that is, again, based on your intelligence.
So if you have an average intellect, you might only have a 50% chance to understand the complex geometry of the spell.
And the consequence for failure is brutal. If you fail that percentile roll, the rules state that your character can never, ever learn that specific spell. The magical formula simply completely escapes your comprehension. You can look at the scroll for the rest of your life and it will just look like gibberish.
That is so punishing, but so flavorful. This mechanical reality transforms the spellbook. It is no longer just a list of class abilities. It becomes the character's most prized, physically vulnerable possession.
Yes.
It represents years of successful study and lucky dice rolls, which makes the rules regarding the loss of a spellbook absolutely devastating to read.
Oh, this is one of my absolute favorite, deeply immersive mechanical details in the entire
It's
text.
so good. Let's say the party is hit by a dragon's breath weapon, and the referee rules that the wizard's backpack is incinerated. Or maybe a thief sneaks into camp during the night and steals the book.
The wizard immediately loses access to their magical progression.
Instantly.
They can still cast whatever spells they have currently memorized in their head for that day, but once those spells are cast, they cannot be refreshed. They are functionally stripped of their class.
And to recover from this, the rules require the wizard to rewrite the lost spellbook entirely from memory. This process requires total, unbroken isolation.
And it takes one entire week of in-game time per spell level. And it costs 1,000 gold pieces per spell level for rare magical inks and materials.
Just think about the psychological impact of that math. If you are a mid-level magic user and you lose your book containing a dozen spells of various levels, you might be looking at months of in-game downtime and tens of thousands of gold pieces just to get back to where you were the day before.
Right, the rest of the party might have to go on adventures without you just to fund your ink supply.
It completely changes how players engage with the physical world. A magic user will guard their backpack with a level of intense paranoia that is entirely justified by the mechanics. They will literally refuse to wade across a river for fear of water damage.
But the magic system isn't purely punitive. It also actively encourages wild creativity through the mechanics of magical research.
Yes, I love this.
The rules explicitly state that a spellcasting character can invent brand new spells that do not exist anywhere in the rulebook.
This is the ultimate expression of the sandbox philosophy. A player can look at the referee and say, I want to invent a spell that rapidly melts solid stone into a pool of lava. The book doesn't say, no, you can only choose from the approved list.
No, the book provides a framework for negotiation.
Right.
The referee looks at the proposed spell, compares it to existing magic, and decides what level the spell should be. Then, the player must spend massive amounts of gold and time researching the formula.
But true to form, there is a chance of catastrophic failure. You might spend 5,000 gold pieces over a month, mix the volatile magical reagents in your laboratory, and roll the dice only to find that your underlying theory was flawed.
The spell fails, the money is gone, the time is wasted.
It makes magic feel like an experimental, highly dangerous science rather than a reliable superpower. And speaking of danger, we cannot fully analyze this system without confronting the stark, uncompromising reality of mortality.
Death in this game is not a minor, temporary inconvenience.
No, it is not.
It is sudden, it is often undignified, and it is incredibly weighty. Modern games often provide extensive safety nets to protect the narrative arc of the characters. If you drop to 0 hit points, you might fall unconscious and make a series of saving throws to cling to life.
Yeah, a healer can casually pop you back up to full effectiveness with a minor cantrip from across the room.
But in this old-school framework, the math is absolute. If your hit points reach 0, you are dead, immediately. Your body falls to the floor.
Now, there is high-level magic, like the Raise Dead spell, that can bring a character back from the afterlife.
Yes.
But the advanced rules include an optional mechanic that makes even divine resurrection a finite, dwindling resource. And once again, it ties directly back to your raw biological stats.
It is the rule regarding limits on returning from death. The exact constitution score you rolled randomly at character creation dictates the absolute maximum number of times your physical body can endure the trauma of being ripped back from the void.
Let's say you rolled an average constitution, a 10, and over the course of a long, brutal campaign, you have been killed by poison traps, crushed by giants, and incinerated by dragons, and resurrected each time.
Okay.
You are resurrected for the 10th time. That is it. Your biological limit is reached.
Fail.
The universe has put a hard cap on your existence. The 11th time you reach 0 hit points, it is permanent. No standard magic in the world can bring you back.
It puts a permanent ticking clock on an adventurer's career. It means that every single time you enter combat, every time you decide to poke a suspicious, heavy iron chest with your 10-foot pole instead of just walking away, the stakes are profoundly real.
The tension at the table is unmanufactured. Death has absolute weight because it is inevitable.
But that weight, that looming threat of permanent character deletion, is exactly what makes the victories in this system so incredibly sweet.
Oh, definitely.
When a player manages to keep a fragile, one-hit point magic user alive through a harrowing multi-session dungeon crawl, and they finally emerge blinking into the sunlight with a sack full of heavy silver and a newly discovered spellbook, the sense of genuine accomplishment is unmatched.
Because the game did not hand them that victory?
Exactly. The mechanics did not protect them. They earned it through their own wits against a truly indifferent, highly lethal world.
We have spent a lot of time detailing the incredible moving parts of this specific ecosystem. We have the lethal rulings first combat. We have the granular resource management of torches and encumbrance. We have the intricate, terrifying magic system.
It's a brilliant, self-contained engine.
But to truly understand the value of this book, we have to zoom out and look at how it fits into the broader landscape of the tabletop role-playing hobby. Because this book does not exist in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle: modularity and the OSR secret.
The old school Renaissance, or OSR, is a massive, thriving movement within the hobby, and the old school Essentials Advanced Fantasy Players Tome sits at the absolute center of it due to one crucial foundational design decision.
Mathematical compatibility.
Mathematical compatibility. This is the open secret that drives the entire scene. The book explicitly details that because its entire engine is built upon the exact mathematical chassis of the 1981 rules, it is functionally compatible with literally decades of published material.
Wait, let me make sure I understand the implications of this. If the underlying math, the monster hit points, the saving throws, the armor classes, is identical to the 1981 rules,
Which it is.
does that mean I could go to a used bookstore, find a dusty, out-of-print adventure module published 40 years ago, bring it home, and run it using the rules in this new book,
Yes.
without having to sit down and convert the stats for every single goblin and trap?
That is exactly what it means. It operates with near zero conversion math. It acts as an emulation software for tabletop gaming. It is a universal operating system that unlocks the entire history of the hobby. You can run adventures from the 70s, 80s, and 90s seamlessly.
Wow. And it doesn't just look backward to the archives, it looks forward. There is a massive community of modern independent creators publishing brand new, bizarre, highly creative adventures, campaign settings, and bestiaries today, explicitly designed for this specific mechanical chassis.
It's amazing. A referee can take an adventure module written 40 years ago, blend it with a brand new, independently published zine printed yesterday, and run them both at the same table tonight.
So what does this all mean? It creates a shared universal language for the entire old school community. But what truly elevates it as an operating system is its attitude toward its own authority. The text features a specific section titled House Rules that fundamentally alters how the reader engages with the book.
Yes, it explicitly states that none of the rules presented in the text are to be taken as sacred gospel.
It is not a rigid code of law that must be strictly enforced.
It is a toolkit. It actively encourages the group playing the game to expand, alter, or completely remove rules to tailor the experience to their specific tastes.
If your table hates tracking the weight of individual coins for encumbrance, the book gives you permission to throw that rule in the trash.
Exactly. If you want to invent a completely new subclass of aquatic, magic-using dwarves, write the math and put them in the game.
And we see that philosophy of adaptable, accessible design directly manifested in how the book handles certain legacy mechanics that are notoriously difficult for modern players to grasp. The absolute best example of this is the inclusion of the Ascending Armor class optional rule.
This is a masterclass in modernizing accessibility without destroying that vital backward compatibility we just talked about.
Let's look at the history of how armor worked. In the original classic games, armor class was calculated using a descending system where a lower number was mathematically better.
Right. An unarmored peasant had an armor class of 9, and a knight in full heavy plate mail had an armor class of 2.
And to figure out if your attack actually hit that knight, you couldn't just roll a die and compare the numbers. You had to consult a complex, cross-referenced attack matrix table printed in the rulebook, cross-referencing your character's level against the defender's descending armor class to find the specific target number you needed to roll.
It was functional for the era, but it is incredibly counterintuitive for anyone raised on modern games, where higher numbers are always universally better.
Yeah, it adds a layer of cognitive load to every single combat roll. So this book presents a completely modern alternative. Ascending Armor class. In this optional system, an unarmored peasant has a baseline armor class of 10, and the knight in plate mail has an armor class of 17.
Much simpler.
When you attack, you simply roll your 20-sided die, add your bonuses, and if the total meets or beats the 17, you hit. It is clean, instantaneous math.
But the true genius is not just including the modern rule. It is how the layout handles presenting both rules simultaneously. The book does not force the table to choose one system and ignore the other.
Oh, this is great.
Throughout the entire text, on every single monster stat block, on every piece of equipment, on every spell description, it lists the classic descending armor class first, and then immediately follows it with the modern ascending armor class inside brackets.
So the stat block for a goblin will simply read AC 613.
Precisely. The elegance of that bracketed layout means that a table of veteran players who have the old 70s attack matrices memorized can run the game exactly how they always have, ignoring the brackets entirely.
While simultaneously, a table of brand new players can use the intuitive, modern ascending math without ever having to stop the game to do on-the-fly mathematical conversions.
It respects the deep history of the game while completely removing the barrier to entry for newcomers.
It is brilliant graphic design serving game mechanics, and it perfectly encapsulates what this entire book is trying to achieve. As we wrap up this inaugural deep dive on Into the Megadungeon, I want to summarize the ultimate value of the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome.
It's quite a legacy.
It really is. What you are getting when you open this book is not just a list of rules. You are getting a meticulously organized, beautifully presented shortcut to decades of gaming history. It provides a lethal, highly imaginative, and endlessly customizable framework to tell stories of survival, horror, and wonder.
And it is a system that fundamentally respects both your time and your intelligence.
Yes, it really does.
Whether you use the basic fast track method to roll up an archetypal halfling and start delving into a dungeon in 10 minutes, or you take the advanced path to painstakingly calculate the fractional hit points of a dual-class Drow fighter thief navigating the staggering weight of their silver hoard.
The game trusts you. It trusts you to imagine the world and interact with it logically.
It trusts you to navigate the blank grid paper. It doesn't hold your hand with glowing blue lines.
And that leaves us with a provocative final thought for you to mull over as we sign off today. We live in a design era where modern games desperately try to provide a specific rule, a specific button on your character sheet, or a specific skill check for every single action imaginable. The goal is total algorithmic clarity.
But by providing fewer rules.
By deliberately leaving massive, unmapped gaps in the text and leaving the resolution to human judgment, conversation, and imagination.
Does a system like this actually give you more true freedom?
Think about that paradox next time you find yourself staring down a dark, unmapped hallway with nothing but a fading torch and a 10-foot pole.
Until then, keep your map precise and your iron rations dry.
Keep your torches lit and your imaginations wild. We will see you on the next deep dive.